Good morning. I am James Curtis, aka Pork Chop Express, host and head writer, of course, at iheartsequels.blogspot.com. I say morning again because I have to do this before my shift, and my shift starts at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's a little before 7 o'clock in the morning, so I'm a little tired. Had a long night last night, but I'm going to try for your benefit and for mine to keep this as short and as concise as possible, because I don't need to be long-winded and I don't need to drag on before my workday starts. This past weekend, my girlfriend and a friend of mine, we all went down, jumped into my SUV, and took in a double feature at Vineland Drive-In. In the City of Industry is the drive-in I hit up quite frequently, although this is my first trip so far this year, actually, to the drive-in. We took in a double feature of The Amazing Spider-Man and Men in Black 3, and that seems like a perfect double feature for us to talk about here on iHeart Sequels. Of course, The Amazing Spider-Man isn't a sequel. It's actually a reboot, as everybody knows. I'm going to not try to think of this as a review of a retelling of the story of Peter Parker and his origins as Spider-Man. I'm going to try to think of this as a review as just the telling of that tale. And even in the telling of that story, The Amazing Spider-Man comes up a little short. I got to give kudos to a couple of credit where credit's due. Some kudos first and foremost. Martin Sheen is an amazing Uncle Ben. Sally Field is quite good, even though she's not given much to do as Aunt May. And Emma Stone, although there are moments where I feel like her chemistry is a little lacking between her and Andrew Garfield, I think she did a great job. And you can see why it's so easy to fall in love with her as Gwen Stacy. She's just spot on. She's perfect for the part. As for Andrew Garfield, he's not a bad Peter Parker. Although there are times where his awkwardness almost comes across as mentally challenged. That sounds really shitty, but it's true. There's moments where his awkwardness, even with Gwen Stacy, which is supposed to be kind of cute, doesn't come across as cute. It comes across as kind of in serious need. But he's not bad, and there are moments where he definitely captures the wonder of a kid who's discovered he's now has superpowers. There are other things in the film that I really liked. I thought there was some really neat stuff with the showcasing the awkwardness of when he first gets his powers. You know, he's just breaking things, and he's clumsy as hell, and he's ripping things apart. And that first scene where he winds up fighting the guys on the subway after he wakes up with his newfound powers, which was kind of a funny way to introduce it. It wasn't like he woke up the next morning in bed and all of a sudden he got it. He woke up on a subway train and he's imbued with these powers. It was kind of funny, but and there's a lot of like nice little awkward character moments that I enjoyed. But in general, just as a telling of the Spider-Man tale, it's a pretty boring, pretty straightforward, pretty flat way of doing it. There's a couple of moments where they get the tone right for when he's actually excited by his newfound powers, and of course, you know, the tone's right for some of those awkward moments with his newfound powers. But in general, it's not a very lively film, and the exposition tends to drag on, and by the time you actually get to the superhero ending of the film, it all feels a little forced and a little out of nowhere. I'm still kind of curious how much this film was chopped down from its original run. Of course, there's a lot of talk about a lot of plot threads seemingly sort of drifting off. These are things that I noticed, but things that had already come up pre-release about, you know, his parents not playing as much of a pivotal role, or at least not as much as people thought they were going to with this untold story tagline that they were selling to people. There's other ones, too, that are strange. There's, you know, the fact that we never really find out what's going to happen with him and the guy who killed Uncle Ben. Spoiler for people who haven't seen it, don't know Spider-Man's story. Uncle Ben dies in a rather awkward revisiting of that moment from the comics and from previous films. It's despite Sheen's performance and Garfield's performance in the moment, it just seems perfunctory. It seems just like we have to get through this and then we can move on. And the same thing kind of happens with him hunting down his uncle's killer. There's no resolve. That thread is completely gone by the time we get to the end of the film, even though he never caught the guy, never caught up with him. So that's one. Again, this is spoiler heavy. This is for people who've seen it. Another thread is the SWAT team that the lizard turns into lizard people as part of his plan. We don't see them again until they're already cured. There's nothing that happens with that. It's kind of strange that they would introduce that and do nothing with it. I'm sure it was edited for time. Yeah, there's a lot of problems in this film. Rhys Ifans is not a bad Kurt Connors, and I don't feel like his plan comes out of nowhere. This is a guy who's clearly obsessed with the notion of the perfection of man, that we can all be better, that there's a uniformity that he's looking forward to, so that people cannot be hurt, cannot be, that he's basically like kind of a Frankenstein character. He wants the best for people, but of course that leads to malevolent ends, and a lot of that happens when he transforms and the lizard brain takes over. So it doesn't feel completely out of character. It's ridiculous. They introduce everything quite early on. That ending doesn't come out of nowhere. This is a guy who clearly wants to see the betterment of man, but once that aggressive lizard brain takes over, it goes from being, I'm going to find a cure to help everybody, to I'm going to turn them all into lizards because everything that's wrong with man comes from the fact that they're man. Now I'm going to make them lizard people. It's ridiculous and a little heavy-handed, but then again, it didn't come out of nowhere. There's some just strange there's some strange stuff going on in this film, but there's some stuff that I thought worked. It's weird for a film that doesn't seem as cynical as people made it out to be. My biggest problem with this movie is that they had to kill the Captain Stacy character, which seems completely unnecessary. This is a character who has had an incredible bond with Peter, very briefly, but someone who has made quite an impact on Peter in the brief time that they've shared together. And I get the feeling that they needed to try to justify Peter's promise to Captain Stacy by having Captain Stacy die, but it just seems cheap. It seems exploitative. And Peter seems like the kind of character who, after everything he's been through with Captain Stacy, could hear this from a Captain Stacy who's alive, standing there, breathing just fine, and would still keep that promise, or at least try to. Of course, he's not really going to keep that promise because it's Gwen Stacy and he's in love. But I felt like my biggest problem with the movie is Captain Stacy's death seems needless and exploitative. Maybe I'm just not a cynical person. Maybe I believe that Peter is good enough and Captain Stacy is a strong enough character for him to make that promise without the death of that character, especially coming after the death of Uncle Ben. Does he really need that? He has to understand. He's already learned a lot about responsibility and about character. So I'm a little disappointed in that. The scenes with the cranes, yeah, it's a little cheesy. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, where all the workers in the city help him get his shit together by putting the cranes out in a straight line in front of the Oscorp building so Spider-Man can just swing straight to the final battle with the lizard. It's a little cheesy, but again, it feels kind of honest. And coming after that bridge scene where Spider-Man saves C. Thomas Howell's son, it's pretty authentic and pretty amazing. That scene with the sun is fantastic. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. The last fight with the lizard is really amazing because of how powerful the lizard comes across in a lot of those scenes with Spider-Man. He really does hand his ass to him so many times. But the lizard design is really awful, and it's not just the CGI, it's the design itself. It's just, God, it's fucking terrible. It's the worst. There's a lot of little things that I liked in some of the battle stuff and the scenes with the lizard. I like the scene where Spider-Man goes down into the sewer and he basically puts out all the tether lines to kind of see where the lizard is running around in the sewer. I thought that was kind of neat. I thought the POV stuff was ridiculous. I didn't see it in 3D. Obviously, it's a drive-in, so I thought the POV stuff was kind of stupid. It looked stupid. Completely unnecessary, but maybe it looked better in 3D. I don't know. One of my favorite funny scenes in the movie, though, because unintentionally funny, was the There's a scene where Peter Parker's rocking out with his new powers down at some dockside warehouse, it looks like. And there's definitely some moments of exhilaration and pure joy, but at the same time, I couldn't help but think that the scene played out like something from Footloose meets Gleaming the Cube. I don't know. I think it's hard to get a genuinely nerdy Peter Parker on the screen sometimes, and Tobey Maguire did a really good job. Sam Raimi did a really good job. It seems like Mark Webb wanted to make something that he thought would appeal to an authentic youth of this day and age. So he tried to make Peter Parker a little bit darker, a little bit more serious. He's already willing to stand up to Flash even before he gets his powers. So I don't know. It's weird. I don't completely disagree with it because I could see where he's coming from. At the same time, there's no drama to it. There's no drama to it whatsoever. You kind of know what Peter's going to do. I don't know, there's a lot of ground to cover here, but it's just not a very interesting film. It feels very flat. I think one of my main problems with the film, first and foremost, is Mark Webb has no visual style whatsoever. It's a very dark film. Everything is just dark, dark, dark. And after a while, there's no color, there's no pop, there's no vibrancy, there's no life to it all. It's such a dour film from beginning to end. And I know I use that term a lot, but this isn't just thematically dour, because there is it's not as cynical as people were afraid it was going to be. It's not Twilight for it's not Spider-Man for the Twilight generation, but it is a very flat, uninteresting looking film. It's very dull and lifeless. That's one of the things that really doesn't help. The script has no real momentum at all. By the time we get to the stuff with the lizard, it just all seems very perfunctory. You know what I mean? Like, there was everybody knows the story of Peter Parker, so I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem, though, is that there was no life put into this first telling of this new trilogy or whatever they're going for. So I'm going to give The Amazing Spider-Man a thumbs down, but it's definitely worth seeing for some of the performances. It's worth seeing because it's a big screen spectacle. It's a summer movie. I'm sure most people have already seen it. It's been out for like a week now by the time I'm doing this review. I'm a little late. But, I didn't read any other reviews before this. I tried to avoid it. I had read some pre-release stuff, but in general I've tried to stay away from other people's opinion. I think the main thing I want to get across is how lifeless Mark Webb's direction is, how visually uninteresting it is, and that the death of Captain Stacy is a big one for me. I don't know how other people feel about it, but it seems pointless. And unnecessary and exploitative. I don't know how anybody else feels, but that's where I'm at. Moving on to the B feature. Spider-Man was the A feature. Moving on to the B feature. Saw Men in Black 3. I had no hopes for Men in Black 3, like a lot of people. I love the first Men in Black. Still. It's one of those movies I throw on every once in a while. I still get a little charge out of it. It's ridiculously funny. It's very sweet. It's incredibly creative. It's a fun film. You know what? It's one of those films where it's so perfect. It's like Gremlins 2. It's like Tremors. It's this perfect blend of the high comedy and the special effects and the wonder and the awe. It's a Barry Sonnenfeld film, but it feels very much like it's part of Spielberg's canon as a producer. There's a wonder and awe to that first film, and there's glorious ideas about sacrifice and duty and friendships and the unlimited wonders of the world and the galaxy and the possibilities, the infinite possibilities. It's just magical. I mean, this is me maybe going a little overboard, hyperbolic a little bit, but I think the first Men in Black is a great film, and people tend to overlook that because maybe they're a little burnt out on Will Smith. Maybe they're just burnt out on franchise anything. I'm shocked that there are people who like Independence Day more than they like Men in Black. Men in Black is a tight, well-made, smart film. Independence Day is a bloated piece of shit and was a bloated piece of shit from day one. Whatever. Digression. I love Men in Black, which is why Men in Black 2 is all the more disappointing. As a guy who really enjoys sequels, Men in Black 2 hurts. It feels cheap. It feels like a cash in. It feels like nobody wants to be there. All the magic and wonder that was in the first film is completely stripped out of it. The script is a nightmare. The villain isn't interesting. Something that's, the first fucking movie's villain was an amazing villain. The only things I really remember about Men in Black 2 are Rosario Dawson, who I had a mad crush on, and Johnny Knoxville, who completely disappears. Talk about bad screenwriting. I mean, the character completely disappears from what I remember. And I just have a soft spot for Knoxville. I think he's a nice, he's just got a presence that I really enjoy. But, I mean, really, honestly, Men in Black 2 is up there with, like, Beverly Hills Cop 3 and City Slickers 2, and they're just some of the worst fucking sequels I've ever seen. They're horrible. And now you've got a sequel, a third film that feels decades late almost. And I really didn't know what to think. The early trailers weren't that great. There was some funny stuff in there. I thought that the idea of using Josh Brolin as a young Tommy Lee Jones was kind of cool, but then what I saw in the trailers just seemed like a really funny imitation. That's it. But Men in Black 3 turned out to be a really pleasant surprise. It has that sweetness. It has that genuine wonder about it. The characters, everybody seems to be into it. Will Smith's performance, the stuff that they showed in the trailer seemed like mugging, but his performance is so amazing, especially coming off of, or just how he's working still with Tommy Lee Jones. You'd think after the performances they gave Men in Black 2, these guys wouldn't want to work together ever again, but I thought they worked really well together in the scenes that they had with each other early on, and again at the end. And Josh Brolin was amazing. I was blown away, because what could have easily just been a cheap imitation, which it does feel like in the opening scenes, because they're trying to get the idea across that this is what Kay was like back then, and that's kind of who he is now. But you get to see the heart in that character. You get to see Josh Brolin give that guy a little bit more depth, a little bit more dimension. You get to see a warmer character before he became the hardened Kay that we know now. But I think what really makes Men in Black 3 work are the villain and the supporting character. Now, the villain, portrayed by Jermaine Clement, is a bad motherfucker alien called Boris the Animal. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But Boris the Animal is a great villain. He's a fantastic villain. I hardly remember the villain from Men in Black 2, but this guy stands up there with Vincent D'Onofrio's performance in the first Men in Black film. He's scary, he's funny, he's awkward in the right way. There's that really great scene where he first arrives at Coney Island and he's laughing, like trying to force this laughter with the hippies, the pseudo-hippies down in Coney Island. It's really quite funny and blunt and scary. Jermaine Clement does a great job playing that part. He's a bad guy that you want to see get it. And that's saying a lot. You know what I mean? He's not a pushover. He's not obnoxious. He's a hard ass. And a very funny hard ass. The scene where the future Boris talks with the past Boris is hilarious. So that's a saving grace. But then you've got, I can't remember his name right now. I think it's Michael Schulbarg. I can't remember. He was in the Coen Brothers Serious Man, and he's been in Boardwalk Empire. For a long time, he was just a character actor that would pop up. But he is amazing as Griffin. Griffin being the fifth dimensional being who can see and experience multiple realities all at once. And that is the kind of wonder and awe and limitless imagination that I felt like the first film had that this film recaptures. There are so many sweet moments in this movie. Moments that I don't want to say put a tear in your eye and choke you up, though they can depending on how you kind of view the world. But with everything that you see in movies right now, it's really nice to see a film that understands the good and the bad, the realities that there's these amazing things that could happen, there's these awful things that could happen. It's just like the multiple reality stuff is just wonderful, and the fact that he can experience anything at any given time. That scene with the Mets, where they're down watching the game, is fantastic. There's a lot of stuff that he really brings to that character Griffin that's amazing. And I will say that they did wind up sort of retconning the mythos of the film. Now, again, if you're seeing this review, I hope you've seen the film because I'm going to spoil it. They basically let you know that Jay's father sacrificed himself to save Kay at Cape Canaveral in 1969. It's funny because this sort of falls into that place where it could feel cheap, it could feel exploitative, and it does feel kind of weird considering. But you know what? There's something about the way Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith work together, especially in those final scenes, that's just amazing. This relationship that these two men have, it's really sweet and very genuine feeling. Getting choked up. But I really thought I would hate the way that kind of came across when it happened, but I thought it was quite nice. Again, it does kind of put those previous films into a different perspective, especially with the way they recruit Jay in the first film. But I don't know. It works. It works because of how genuine and how sweet the films are, the first and third films. And what else? I feel like there was something else I was going to say. Little things. Will Arnett's character, his cameo was kind of funny. Emma Thompson was fine. Alice Eve was very pretty playing the young Emma Thompson, and very sweet. It's funny, of course, they say that Zed is passed away and he's memorialized, but I would have loved to have seen someone try and do a young Rip Torn. That would have been hilarious. I like that they put Frank the Pug. They put a big picture of him in Will's apartment. That was kind of funny. Yeah, I gotta give a thumbs up to Men in Black 3. The caveat being, if you like Men in Black, and Men in Black 1 especially. I know a lot of people don't. I know it's not. It's weird that people don't like the Men in Black films, because to me it's the kind of movie we grew up watching in the 80s. It's as perfect a film as Ghostbusters, again, Ghostbusters, Gremlins, Back to the Future, Tremors. Like, it's just this great balance of wonder, awe, comedy, science fiction. Just, I love it. And because I loved it so much, maybe I'm giving Men in Black 3 a little bit too much cred, and maybe it's just because I had no expectations of it whatsoever, but I wound up enjoying Men in Black 3. A lot of that, again, has to do with the supporting characters, but still, that's saying a lot considering how awful everything was in Men in Black 2. Everything. Even the people I liked. I might like Rosario Dawson and Johnny Knoxville, but their characters were so poorly written. Jesus. Horrible. I almost blocked that entire movie out of my head. Anyway, so I'm going to be doing some more roundtables. Going to be doing another video this week where I talk about one of my favorite sequels of all time, and I'll give you a hint. This Friday is Friday the 13th, and we've already established that I enjoy the Friday the 13th film series immensely, but I wonder if you guys can tell which of the Friday the 13th sequels is my favorite. If you send me an email and you guess right before I air it, I'll give you a cookie. So, until next time, I am James Curtis, Pork Chop Express, here at iHeartSequels.blogspot.com, and we will be seeing you soon.